So I'm going to read from the beginning of the canto. A fixed and narrow power with rigid forms, he saw the empire of the little life, an unhappy corner in eternity. It lived upon the margin of the idea, protected by ignorance, as in a shell. Then, hoping to learn the secret of this world, he peered across its scanty fringe of sight to disengage from its surface clear obscurity the force that moved it and the idea that made imposing smallness on the infinite the ruling spirit of its littleness, the divine law that gave it right to be, its claim on nature and its need in time. He plunged his gaze into the siege of mist that held this ill-lit, straitened continent, ringed with the skies and seas of ignorance, and kept it safe from truth and self and light. As when a searchlight stabs the night's blind breast, and dwellings and trees and figures of men appear as if revealed to an eye in nothingness. All lurking things were torn out of their veils and held up in his vision's sun-white blaze. A busy, restless, uncouth populace teemed in their dusky, unnoted thousands there. In a mist of secrecy wrapping the world scene, the little deities of time's nether act, who work remote from heaven's controlling eye, plotted, unknown to the creatures whom they move, the small conspiracies of this petty reign, amused with the small contrivings, the brief hopes, and little eager steps and little ways, and reptile wallowings in the dark and dust, and the crouch and ignominy of creeping life. A trepidant and motley multitude, a strange pell-mell of magic artisans, was seen molding the plastic clay of life, an elfin brood, an elemental kind. Astonished by the unaccustomed glow, as if immanent in the shadow started up imps with wry limbs and carved beast visages, sprite prompters, goblin wizened or fairy small, and genii fairer but unsouled and poor, and fallen beings, their heavenly portion lost, and errant divinities trapped in time's dust. Ignorant and dangerous wills, but armed with power, half animal, half God, their mood, their shape. Out of the greyness of a dim background, their whispers come, an inarticulate force, awake in mind, an echoing thought or word. To their sting of impulse, the heart's sanction draw, and in that little nature do their work, and fill its powers and creatures with unease. Its seed of joy they curse with sorrow's fruit, put out with error's breath its scanty lights, and turn its surface truths to falsehood's ends. Its small emotions spur, its passions drive to the abyss, or through the bog and mire, or else with a goad of hard, dry lusts they prick, wild jogs on devious ways that nowhere lead, life's cart, finding no issue from ignorance. To sport with good and evil is their law, luring to failure and meaningless success. All models they corrupt, all measures cheat, make knowledge a poison, virtue a pattern dull, and lead the endless cycles of desire through semblances of sad or happy chance to an inescapable fatality. This is really very not a nice realm that Asvapati has reached now. He had explored, we saw in the previous canto, he'd explored the development of living forms out of matter, how life emerged in matter. But behind that emergence of living forms in matter, there are these little subtle beings. And that's what he's seeing now. Will you begin, Corinne?
The Godheads of the little life, a fixed and narrow power with rigid forms. He sows the empire of the little life, and an happy corner in eternity. It lived upon the margin of the indeed, protected by ignorance as in a shell.
So this is what he's seeing now. The empire of the little life. The realm, the subtle realm that is ruled by this principle of little life. And the poet says that this empire is fixed, rigid, stiff, inflexible, and narrow. And he describes it as an unhappy corner in eternity. In all the infinite possibilities of the creation, or beyond the creation. Here's this realm, an unhappy corner, the realm of the little life. That realm, he says, lived upon the margin of the idea, capital I. So this is the creative idea which has brought the manifestation into existence. And this little corner, this narrow corner of rigid forms, is only on the very edge of the creative idea. And it can only exist because it's protected by ignorance. Half consciousness, maybe even less than half conscious. And that ignorance protects it like a shell, some rigid exterior, and that realm can live inside, protected from the knowledge that would illumine it. Martin.
Then, hoping to learn the secret of this world, he peered across its candy fringe of sight. To disengage from its surface-clear obscurity, the force that moved it, and the idea that made, imposing smallness on the infinite, the ruling spirit of its littleness, the divine law that gave it right to be, its claim on nature, and its need in time.
This is what Aspipati is doing. He's moving from realm to realm, exploring, becoming as aware, as conscious as possible of each of these different realms and the principle that it represents. No? So in this case also, he sees this empire of the little life, and he hopes, he wants to learn the secret of this world. And to do that, he has to peer, to look with difficulty, to focus his vision carefully, because it is this shell of ignorance that protects it is very misty, and there's not enough light there, this scanty fringe of sight. He can only just see something around the edge of it. On the surface, it seems as if there's something clear, but then that surface clear is actually obscure. It's full of darkness. He can't see clearly. But he goes on peering through that mist in order to try to find out what is the force that is moving in this realm. And what is that creative idea behind it? How has it come into existence? That creative idea has imposed smallness on the infinite. The infinite is limitless, but somehow this power of concentration of idea has made this little corner separate, cut it off, enclosed it in ignorance, no? So what is that idea that has made the ruling spirit of this littleness? There must be some kind of divine law that gives it a right to exist. What is that divine law which has allowed this to come into existence? What is its claim? What is its right in nature? Why is this needed? Why has this, what need has brought this realm into existence in our universe of space and time? This is what he wants to find out, and we will see if we can learn anything from what he discovers. Bhavana.
He plunged his gaze into the sea of nature that held his image continent, ringed with the skies and seas of ignorance, and kept it safe from truth and self and light.
Yes. So, Aswapati's subtle vision is a power of knowledge. So when he focuses it on something, it's like a searchlight, lighting something up, no? So he plunges his gaze, his vision, his will to see into that mist, which is as if surrounding and attacking that world, that mist of ignorance that is holding this, he says, ill-lit, straightened continent. A continent is a big land mass where there can be mountains and seas and all of the kinds of things, no? Ill-lit. There's not much light because of this mist and this shell of ignorance, no? Straightened. It means restricted within a narrow range. And this continent, this empire of the little life, is ringed, again he says it, with the skies and seas of ignorance. It's that siege of mist, of unconsciousness, which is keeping that area safe, cutting it off from truth and self, the divine presence, the divine light. He's focusing his vision, forcing it through that mist to see what is hidden behind. Dhanalakshmi.
As when a searchlight stabs the night's blind rest, and dwellings and trees and figures of men appear, as if revealed to a night in nothingness. All lurking things were torn out of their ways, and held up in his vision's sun-white blaze.
His power of vision is so pure and clear. It's like a ray of sun. So when he focuses on that mist and tries to penetrate it, then it's like a searchlight in the darkness. A beam of light. Stabbing into the night's blind breast, the darkness. And then we see what is hidden by the darkness. Dwellings, houses, trees, people. It's as if when first there's the darkness, and then suddenly this ray of light comes, and it's as if all these things have been revealed to an eye, a seeing eye, in that nothingness of darkness. So all those things that are hiding in the darkness, all lurking things, they're torn out of the veils. The veils are torn away and held up in Aswapati's sun-white blaze, the blaze of his power of vision. There's a nice painting of this, of the searchlight and what is revealed. Yeah. Kamla.
You see this as Antarctica is steamed in their dusky, unnoted thousands there. In the midst of secrecy, rapid reversing, the little gauges of times tended back. They were removed from heaven's controlling us, floated around to be creatures whom we know. The small conspiracies of this pretty being, amused with the small contrivance, the green house, until it will be distracted and disappeared. And after while looking in the dark and dust, unconscious of the moon, of beating light,
This is what he sees. There's lots and lots and lots of beings there, and they're busy. They're not sleeping. They're very active. They're restless, but they are uncouth. They are not refined and educated beings. They're beings very rough and brutal, no? Lots of them. Those are the peopling that realm. There are thousands of them. Teeming, that's what ants and termites do. If you disturb an ant's nest, they're all suddenly rushing here and there, no? Unnoted thousands there. We haven't noticed them. They are affecting our lives, but we don't notice them. They're because they're hidden by the darkness and the ignorance. Again, he mentions this mist which is surrounding that world, a mist of secrecy which is wrapping, enveloping the world scene. The little deities, the little immortal beings who live in these lower levels of the time world. Nether means the lower levels. So there's many different things happening in universal time. These beings are there on a very low, dark level. But they're very active. He says it again, they work. But they're very far away from the controlling eye of the divine consciousness. There's a big, huge gap between the truth vision and these little beings. No? And there in the darkness, in that mist of secrecy, they are plotting mischief and meanness. They are moving the creatures on other levels, us, for example, but we don't notice them. There they are working out their small conspiracies. They're sitting in meetings and working out mean and mischievous things to do. They're amused with their cleverness. And they're very amused with us, or with the other beings, with our small contrivings, the things that we try to do, and our brief hopes, and our attempts, our little eager steps, and our little ways. And the other thing that they enjoy very much is when on these lower levels there are reptile wallowings in the dark and dust. Wallowing, it's what hippopotamuses and pigs do when they find a nice patch of mud. They roll in it and enjoy it. He says like reptiles, perhaps like dinosaurs. And they are wallowing not so much in mud as in the dark and the dust of the lower levels of existence. And the crouch and ignominy of creeping life. Crouching is when you bend down, hide yourself, no? Ignominy is shame. Disgraceful, disgusting things of creeping life. All those lower forms of life that creep about in the mud and the dust.
What is the meaning of this word populate?
A populace. The populace of Pondicherry is roughly 2 lakh at the moment, I believe. A population, yes.
It doesn't mean the common people. It doesn't mean common people.
It means the people in general.
But here there are only beings, no?
These are not human beings, these are beings. Yeah.
Beings.
The little deities of time's nether acts. So he calls them deities, I think, because they're not exactly born and they don't exactly die.
But apart from these little deities, there are other beings also in Mediterranean.
I think what he's talking about now is the nature of all of the beings of that realm. Yes. Joel.
A trepidant and motley multitude, a strange pell-mell of magic artisans, was seen molding the plastic clay of life, an elfin brood, an elemental kind.
Trepidant. It means trembling and fearful. And motley means they're all different shapes and sizes and colors. They all look very different from each other. Motley, it's things that don't match. In the Middle Ages, the kings in their courts, they used to keep jesters whose job was to amuse people, to keep people amused. And to show that that's what they were, that they were jesters and clowns, they wore special clothes which were made of many small pieces of cloth of different colors, motley. So when they put on the motley, then that meant that now they're doing their work, they're clowning around and trying to amuse people. So this multitude that is there is like that. They don't look all the same. They look very weird and strange and different from each other. Again, there's a lot of them. He says there's this strange pell-mell. Pell-mell. It means many different forms and beings all rushing along and bumping into each other. There's a big street in London called Pall Mall. It used to be the place where the fashionable, elegant people rode about in their chariot carriages and showed themselves off to the populace. So pell-mell means rushing along at a great speed in confusion, traffic confusion.
Does it have anything to do with pell-mell in French? It's what it is.
Yes, the same, no?
It's the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Sri Aurobindo often takes a word or expression from French and uses it. But they are magic artisans. This again suggests they're working, they're doing things, they're making things. He says what they're doing is molding the plastic clay of life. So with their thoughts and their actions, they are shaping things that happen in life, in the little life, in that realm of little life. And he describes them as an elfin brood. Elves and fairies, they are these magic, subtle beings, no? We hear about in fairy stories. Elemental beings. They're beings that are very close to the elements of earth and air and water and fire. And when Asvapati shines his sun-bright gaze on those people, that startles them very much. They're astonished by that unaccustomed glow, that light that he shines on their world. So they move, they jump up, as if imminent, as if they'd been just there existing in the shadows. Now suddenly they spring forward and show themselves. And he describes them like these creatures that one sees in carvings from the Middle Ages. Horrible little beings, imps with wry limbs, twisted, ugly little beings. We see their faces, their beast visages, carved in stone and in wood, carved beast visages. Some of them are prompters. A prompter is in a theatre. You have the actors on the stage, and below the stage there's somebody who has to remind the actors what to say or do if they happen to forget. A prompter is somebody who tells you what to do next. No? These are spirit prompters, sprite prompters. And they are also very strange in their appearance. They're wizened, screwed up, lined faces, ugly goblin faces. Goblins are very mean, subtle beings who live underground. And some of them are very small. They might be quite pretty with pretty wings and colors. So they're the ugly ones and the not so ugly ones. And then there are some beings, fallen beings, beings who have been much more divine and who've lost their divinity. They have lost their heavenly portion. And beings who are still divine but who are lost, who are errant, and they are trapped in the dust of time.
Shraddhavan really means imps.
Imps. Yes, these are those mischievous little beings who, of course, Mother says sometimes they can be nice. You know, she tells that when she was looking after Sri Aurobindo and the milk was boiling over, then some of these little imps would come and tug at her sari and warn her that, something's going to go wrong. But mostly when we use this word, we mean little beings who are doing mischief. Yeah, that's what it says. That's what they enjoy, no? Are the contrivings, the mischief. So he mentions several different kinds of people. No, the imps, the sprites, the genii. They are much more powerful beings, actually. And here he says they look more beautiful. These are life spirits, but they don't have any psychic being. They are unsouled, and because of that, they are poor. And then there are these fallen beings, these beings who have been on a higher level and have lost their heavenly part. And then there are other divine beings who have wandered away from the right path and got trapped in the dust of time. Will you read, please?
Ignorant and envious, we were armed with power. Half animal, half God, that knows less of
Shape, their shape.
out of the
Grayness.
of the blue background. Their whispers come and
Inarticulate.
force awake in mind and twin of love. Into their sitting
Sting, their sting of impulse.
the sting of impulse, the hearts,
Sanction.
as sanctions grow, and in that living nature do their work and feel its powers and gazes with unease.
With unease. Thank you. So this is the work that those beings do. They are ignorant, but they are dangerous because they do have some power. They're a mixture, half animal, half God, in their mood, in their nature, and in their form. And what they do is they whisper to us and to the other beings. They whisper without showing themselves. Out of the greyness of a dim background, their whispers come into our consciousness. We don't even notice it coming, but they come. Those whispers are an inarticulate force. Inarticulate. They don't express themselves very clearly, but there's some force behind their whisper. And that force wakes up in our minds, or in any minds, an echoing thought or word. They draw the heart's sanction. Something in our heart says yes, responds to that sting. Like a mosquito, they come and give you a sting, and something in you responds, and you do what they suggest. No? That's the way they do their work in that little nature. And what they're doing all the time is filling the powers that are there, the creatures that are there, with unease. It's rather troubling and disturbing, the effect of their action. Would you like to read?
Its seed of joy flickers with sorrow's fruit. Put out with air's breath with scanty lights, and learn its surface truths to falsehoods things. Its small emotions spur, its passions drive. The abyss or through the bog and mind, or else with the bone of hard, dry lusts they prick. By jogs on devious ways that nowhere lead, like start finding no issue from ignorance.
Thank you. So the effect of their actions is to destroy whatever little seed of joy, of delight is there. They curse it with sorrow's fruit. The outcome of their action is suffering. Whatever little bit of light is there, they just blow it out like a candle. Put out with error's breath. Whatever little light of truth was there, they blow it out. And the surface truths, maybe in that world there are some things that are relatively true in that realm, but they distort them. They turn them to falsehood's ends. They poke, they drive its small emotions, its passions, to the abyss, to the deep, dark hole. Or they drive the emotions through the bog and mire, through the mud, the swamp, the dirt. And, or else, they goad. A goad is something that you use to drive an elephant or a bullock. no? So what they use for goading is it's like an accumulation of hard, dry lusts, desires. They go on poking us and driving our cart of life, which just wanders here and there, driven by these pokings, no? On devious ways, wandering here and there, going nowhere in particular, they lead nowhere. The cart of life, which doesn't find any way out from that realm of ignorance.
All these qualities mentioned here, still we could see in men also.
Yes, of course, that's why he's telling us about it, because this little life, which here he's describing, and you can say it's universal existence, it's very much a part of our lives. And that is why Aswapati is exploring it, and that's why Sri Aurobindo is telling us about it, to make us aware that these forces are affecting us all the time. We will see it more and more as we go through this canto. Amrita, would you read?
To sport is good and evil is their wrong. Rise to travel and meaningless success. All models they corrupt, all measures cheap. Make knowledge a poison, virtue a poison dove, and lead the endless cycles of desire through semblance or sake or hating chance to an inescapable fatality.
It's terrible, really. These little beings, just to play about with good and evil. That's the law of their being. They lure us, they attract us to failure, or maybe even to success, but to success that is meaningless, useless. They corrupt all models, all models of good behavior or ideals of any kind. They spoil them. They cheat all measures. Things that should be small, they make them big, and things that are big, they make them small, misleading us. They make knowledge into a poison. Virtue, they make virtue, good behavior, being good, they make it appear so boring and dull that nobody wants to have anything to do with it. And they lead the endless cycles of desire through semblances, appearances, sad appearances or happy appearances. But what they're doing is leading us always to an inescapable fatality. If we allow ourselves to be led by these little beings, they will drive us finally into the bog, to the abyss. I think we'll read one more. Would you, Yusa, would you like to read one more sentence?
Who by the influence is enacted there, nor their love is their empire or their role. Wherever are soulless minds and guideless lives, and in a small body sound is all that counts. Wherever love and light and largeness lacks, their crooked fashioners take up their tasks. To all half-conscious worlds they extend their reign.
Continue, yeah.
Here too these godlings drive our human hearts. Our nature's twilights is their lurking place. Here too the dark and primitive heart obeys the veiled suggestions of a hidden mind that dogs our knowledge with misleading lies. and stands between us and the truth that saves.
This is a warning. In that world, in that empire of the little life, everything is enacted by the influence of those beings. But it's not only there. Their empire extends further. It extends everywhere where there are soulless minds and guideless lives. And because the minds are soulless and the lives are guideless, then there's no love, there's no light, there's no largeness, narrow. No? These crooked fashioners, he said they're artisans, they're kind of craftsmen. They make things, no? But they make things crooked. So their reign, their command extends to all half-conscious worlds, worlds that are dominated by ignorance. So even here in our world, which is also a world of ignorance, no? These godlings, these little beings, drive our human hearts. The twilight parts, the dim, dark parts of our nature is where they hide. Here too, the dark and primitive heart, that part of our heart which belongs to the little life, obeys the veiled suggestions, the whispers of a hidden mind that dogs our knowledge with misleading light. This verb to dog, it's what a dog does. A good dog follows at his master's heels. He doesn't run here and there, he follows. So something that dogs us is always just there at our heels. So in this case, there that hidden mind dogs our knowledge with misleading light, and that stands between us and the truth that saves. This is what separates us from the higher realms of light and consciousness.
This twilight is different from the twilight which later comes in.
Well, there's so many different kinds of twilight. Wherever there's a mixture of dark and light, there's a morning twilight and there's an evening twilight, and there's this kind of twilight of ignorance and mist, of semi-consciousness. Some twilights are full of hope and promise, and others are like this, very restricting, frightening even.
Because it says, is their lurking place. So they are.
It's the place that they choose. They hide in the twilight of our ignorance and half-consciousness. They choose there. They could step into the light, but they don't want to show themselves. They want to hide and act from there. From there they send their veiled suggestions so that we don't notice. I think one has to be very conscious in order to notice the promptings that come from that realm.
But generally the promptings is to lead the person, not
Sure, it can be, but it can also be to lead you astray. These fellows are leading you astray, giving you misleading lights. They're showing themselves as if they're going to help you and guide you, but they're leading you astray. So we'll stop there for today. A fixed and narrow power with rigid forms, he saw the empire of the little life, an unhappy corner in eternity. It lived upon the margin of the idea, protected by ignorance as in a shell. Then, hoping to learn the secret of this world, he peered across its scanty fringe of sight, to disengage from its surface clear obscurity the force that moved it and the idea that made, imposing smallness on the infinite, the ruling spirit of its littleness, the divine law that gave it right to be, its claim on nature and its need in time. He plunged his gaze into the siege of mist that held this ill-lit, straitened continent, ringed with the skies and seas of ignorance, and kept it safe from truth and self and light. As when a searchlight stabs the night's blind breast, and dwellings and trees and figures of men appear as if revealed to an eye in nothingness. All lurking things were torn out of their veils and held up in his vision's sun-white blaze. A busy, restless, uncouth populace teemed in their dusky, unnoted thousands there. In a mist of secrecy, wrapping the world scene, the little deities of time's nether act, who work remote from heaven's controlling eye, plotted, unknown to the creatures whom they move, the small conspiracies of this petty reign, amused with the small contrivings, the brief hopes, and little eager steps, and little ways, and reptile wallowings in the dark and dust, and the crouch and ignominy of creeping life. A trepidant and motley multitude, a strange pell-mell of magic artisans, was seen moulding the plastic clay of life, an elfin brood, an elemental kind. Astonished by the unaccustomed glow, as if immanent in the shadows, started up imps with wry limbs and carved beast visages, sprite prompters, goblin wizened or fairy small, and genii fairer but unsouled and poor, and fallen beings their heavenly portion lost, and errant divinities trapped in time's dust. Ignorant and dangerous wills, but armed with power. Half animal, half God, their mood, their shape. Out of the greyness of a dim background, their whispers come, an inarticulate force, awake in mind, an echoing thought or word. To their sting of impulse the heart's sanction draw, and in that little nature do their work, and fill its powers and creatures with unease. Its seed of joy they curse with sorrow's fruit, put out with error's breath its scanty lights, and turn its surface truths to falsehood's ends. Its small emotions spur, its passions drive to the abyss or through the bog and mire. Or else with a goad of hard dry lusts they prick, while jogs on devious ways that nowhere lead, life's cart finding no issue from ignorance. To sport with good and evil is their law, luring to failure and meaningless success. All models they corrupt, all measures cheat, make knowledge a poison, virtue a pattern dull, and lead the endless cycles of desire through semblances of sad or happy chance to an inescapable fatality. All by their influence is enacted there, nor there alone is their empire or their role. Wherever are soulless minds and guideless lives, and in a small body self is all that counts, wherever love and light and largeness lack, these crooked fashioners take up their task. To all half-conscious worlds they extend their reign. Here, too, these godlings drive our human hearts. Our nature's twilight is their lurking place. Here, too, the darkened primitive heart obeys the veiled suggestions of a hidden mind that dogs our knowledge with misleading light and stands between us and the truth that say,